My name is Ainsley, I'm 28 years old, and I'm standing in my childhood home watching my mother destroy me in front of 30 relatives. She raises her wine glass toward my sister Charlotte and announces loudly, "Your sister is successful and responsible, unlike you. Charlotte owns 3 properties while you waste your life painting." The room goes dead silent. My hands shake as I set down my plate. What Mom doesn't know is that yesterday, I sold my art collection to the Museum of Modern Art for $2 million. Before we dive into this family drama, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Are you someone who's ever felt overlooked or undervalued by your own family? Hit that like button if you've ever been compared to a sibling, and don't forget to subscribe because this story is about to take some incredible turns. Trust me, you'll want to see how a family's golden child narrative can shatter in the most unexpected way. Growing up in our suburban Connecticut home, the hierarchy was established early. Charlotte, 3 years older than me, was the sun around which our family orbited. I remember being 6 years old, struggling to read simple sentences while Charlotte, at 9, was already devouring chapter books and winning spelling bees. Mom would sit with Charlotte for hours, drilling vocabulary words and math problems, their heads bent together in perfect harmony. When I asked for help with my homework, Mom would sigh and say she'd get to it later, but later never came. Dad tried to balance things out when he was home, but his consulting job kept him on the road 4 days a week, leaving Mom's favoritism to flourish unchecked. The evidence of Charlotte's superiority decorated every surface of our home. Her straight-A report cards covered the refrigerator, her violin competition trophies lined the mantel, and her debate team photos dominated the hallway. My art, on the other hand, lived in exile. The watercolor painting I'd spent weeks perfecting in 3rd grade ended up in a basement box labeled miscellaneous. The clay sculpture that won honorable mention at the school art fair mysteriously disappeared during spring cleaning. Mom said we needed to make room for Charlotte's latest academic achievement certificates. The rules in our house seemed to have Charlotte's name written into the fine print. She could stay out until midnight for study groups that I suspected were more social than scholarly. I had a 9 p.m. curfew even in high school, because Mom insisted artists were more vulnerable to bad influences. Charlotte got a brand new car for her 16th birthday, a reward for her perfect GPA. I got a bicycle and a lecture about how transportation should be earned, not given. The real blow came when college acceptances arrived. Charlotte sailed into Harvard Law with a full scholarship, and our parents threw a party that lasted until dawn. When I got into art school with a partial scholarship, Mom's response was to drain my college fund to pay for Charlotte's wedding to her law school boyfriend. She justified it by saying Charlotte's marriage was an investment in our family's future, while art school was just an expensive way to avoid getting a real job. Now, 20 years later, here we all were at Thanksgiving dinner, and nothing had changed. Charlotte swept in wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, carrying a bottle of wine she made sure everyone knew was from a vineyard in France she'd visited last summer. Her husband Richard, a cardiac surgeon, followed behind her like an expensive accessory. I'd arrived 15 minutes earlier in my comfortable jeans with a few paint stains I'd missed, carrying a homemade pumpkin pie nobody would touch because Charlotte had catered desserts from the city's most exclusive bakery. Mom orchestrated the seating like a general positioning troops, placing Charlotte at her right hand where everyone could properly admire her. I was relegated to the far end near Uncle Frank, who always smelled like cigars and disappointment. As we settled in, Mom's passive-aggressive commentary began its familiar rhythm. She complimented Charlotte's new diamond earrings while pointedly staring at my bare earlobes. She praised Richard's recent promotion while asking if I was still doing my little paintings. The word hobby dripped from her lips like acid every time she referenced my work, while Charlotte's career was spoken of in reverent tones usually reserved for religious ceremonies. Charlotte played her part perfectly, offering condescending advice wrapped in false concern. She suggested I might be happier if I found something more stable, maybe used my creativity in advertising or marketing. Her smile never quite reached her eyes as she mentioned knowing people who could help me transition to a real career. The other relatives nodded along, a Greek chorus of agreement that artistic pursuits were fine for children but embarrassing in adults. Only Grandma, sitting quietly in her wheelchair, squeezed my hand under the table, her eyes holding a secret warmth that had sustained me through years of family dinners just like this one. What my family didn't know could fill the Museum of Modern Art, which, ironically, it was about to do. 5 years ago, after yet another family dinner where Mom suggested I consider becoming a kindergarten teacher because at least then my art degree wouldn't be completely wasted, I made a decision that changed everything. I created an artistic alter ego, A. Rain, and began posting my work online under that pseudonym. The name came from my initials and the tears I'd shed after countless family rejections. Those tears, it turned out, would water the garden of my success. My abstract expressionist pieces, inspired by the emotional chaos of growing up invisible, struck a chord with collectors worldwide. The first sale came through Instagram to a buyer in Tokyo who paid $3,000 for a piece I'd painted after Mom forgot my birthday but threw Charlotte a surprise party the same week. That buyer turned out to be connected to the international art scene, and word spread through whispers and private messages. Within 6 months, I was shipping paintings to collectors in Dubai, London, and Los Angeles, carefully packaging each piece in my studio apartment while telling my family I was working part-time at a frame shop. The breakthrough came when tech billionaire Miranda Chen discovered my work at an underground gallery show in Berlin. I'd flown there in secret, telling my family I was visiting a college friend in Boston. Miranda didn't just buy one piece, she commissioned an entire series exploring themes of identity and family dysfunction. The project took 18 months and resulted in 15 large-scale canvases that she displayed in her corporate headquarters. Tech journalists covering her company started asking about the mysterious A. Rain, and suddenly my inbox exploded with gallery inquiries and collector requests. The European art scene embraced me in ways my family never had. Gallery openings in Paris felt like stepping into an alternate universe where my vision was celebrated instead of diminished. Italian collectors competed for my pieces at auctions. A retrospective in Amsterdam drew lines around the block. Art critics wrote essays analyzing my use of color to express intergenerational trauma. I flew to these events in secret, maintaining my cover story of working retail and struggling to make rent. The lie became elaborate, requiring fake work schedules and careful social media management to ensure no trace of A. Rain connected back to Ainsley. The MoMA deal began with a casual email from their contemporary art curator, Dr. Helen Whitfield. She'd been following my work for 2 years and wanted to discuss acquiring several pieces for their permanent collection. What started as a simple acquisition evolved into something unprecedented for a living artist of my age. They wanted a full retrospective of my emotional journey, 15 pieces that would anchor a new wing dedicated to emerging voices in contemporary art. The negotiation took 6 months, with lawyers and agents I'd hired under strict confidentiality agreements. The final contract included not just the $2 million purchase price but commissions for future works and input on how the pieces would be displayed. My financial advisor, one of the few people who knew my real identity, helped structure the windfall wisely. Investments were diversified, trusts were established, and a foundation was created to support young artists from backgrounds like mine where creativity was stifled by family expectations. I purchased a building in Brooklyn to convert into affordable artist studios, bought a penthouse loft where I could finally paint with proper light, and set aside funds for the gallery I planned to open showcasing overlooked talents. All of this remained hidden behind shell companies and pseudonyms, a parallel life built on the canvas of my family's indifference. I'd tried to share my success once, early on, when I sold my first piece for $10,000. Mom laughed, actually laughed, and asked if I meant 10,000 pennies. Charlotte suggested I'd probably been scammed and offered to have her lawyer husband look into it. The dismissal was so complete, so automatic, that I realized they weren't capable of seeing me as anything other than the family failure. Their vision of me had calcified like a fossil, immune to evidence or evolution. So I stopped trying, building my empire in silence while they continued to see only what they expected to see. Sitting at this Thanksgiving table, the weight of my secret felt heavier than any of the canvases I'd ever painted. The irony wasn't lost on me that tomorrow, when the MoMA announcement went public, my work would be discussed on every major art platform in the world while my own mother sat here lamenting my lack of direction. I watched Charlotte preen about her partnership and felt an unexpected wave of pity. She'd spent her whole life meeting expectations that were never hers to begin with, while I'd found freedom in their rejection. The contract papers in my bag seemed to pulse with possibility, waiting for the moment when truth would shatter their carefully constructed hierarchy. Mom's voice cut through the dinner conversation with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel, if surgeons aim to wound rather than heal. She stood, raising her glass of Charlotte's expensive wine, her eyes avoiding mine with practiced ease. "I want to make a toast to my successful daughter," she began, and I knew what was coming. The room fell silent, 30 relatives turning their attention to the performance they'd witnessed variations of for years. Charlotte has achieved everything a parent could hope for. Law partner at 31, married to a brilliant surgeon, owner of 3 beautiful properties including that gorgeous brownstone in Back Bay. She paused, savoring the moment before the blade fell. "Success runs in our family, of course. Well, most of us anyway." Her eyes finally found mine, cold and dismissive. "Your sister is successful and responsible, unlike you, Ainsley. Charlotte builds wealth and stability while you're still playing with paint like a child. She owns 3 properties while you can barely afford that studio apartment. When will you finally grow up and get a real job?" The words hung in the air like smog, choking and toxic. Charlotte's smile spread across her face, the expression of someone who'd won a game only she was playing. She leaned forward, her voice dripping with false concern. "Actually, Mom, that reminds me. Richard knows someone in hospital administration who's looking for a receptionist. It's entry level, but you have to start somewhere, right, Ainsley? I could put in a good word, help you finally get on track." "That's so generous of you, Charlotte," Aunt Marie chimed in, her latest facelift making her expression unnaturally rigid. "Ainsley, you really should consider it. You're not getting any younger, and it's time to think about your future. Maybe if you had a steady job, you could finally find someone to settle down with. I know a nice accountant who's divorced and looking." Uncle Frank grunted his agreement through a mouthful of turkey. "Your cousin Brad started at my factory right out of high school. Now he's floor supervisor, making 60 grand a year with benefits. That's real money, not this artsy-fartsy nonsense. I could get you an interview, but you'd have to lose the attitude and dress appropriately." "The girl needs direction," Dad's brother Uncle Tony added, pointing his fork at me like a weapon. "Too much freedom, that's the problem. Charlotte had structure, discipline. Look where it got her." Charlotte's husband Richard, who usually maintained the bland pleasantness of someone who'd married for networking opportunities, decided to contribute. "There's also marketing. Creative types sometimes do well in advertising. It's not real art, of course, but it uses some of the same skills in a more practical way." "Oh, that's a wonderful idea," Mom seized on this, her enthusiasm genuine for the first time all evening. "Charlotte could introduce you to her firm's marketing team. They do all those charity galas she organizes. You could design flyers or something." "Posters," Charlotte corrected with a patronizing smile. "They're called promotional materials, Mom. But yes, I suppose Ainsley could start as an intern. She'd have to work her way up, of course. No special treatment just because she's my sister." Cousin Brad, Frank's pride and joy, laughed into his beer. "Remember when Ainsley said she was going to be a famous artist? What were we, like 12? Still waiting for that first museum show, cuz. If he only knew." I gripped my water glass, feeling the cool condensation against my palm, grounding myself in the physical sensation to avoid screaming the truth. Grandma's hand found mine again under the table, her grip stronger than her 92 years should allow. She knew. Somehow, she always knew. Mom wasn't finished. The wine had loosened her tongue, or perhaps she simply felt the need to drive the knife deeper. I've been thinking about the future, about legacy and responsibility. Your father and I aren't getting younger, and we need to ensure our assets go where they'll be properly managed. The room grew quiet again, sensing fresh blood in the water. Charlotte straightened in her chair, already counting her inheritance. Mom continued, her voice taking on the formal tone of a decree. We've decided to update our will. Everything will go to Charlotte. The house, the vacation property, the investments, all of it. She's proven she can handle responsibility. Ainsley would just waste it on art supplies and pipe dreams. Charlotte's fake protest was Oscar-worthy. Oh, Mom, that's not necessary. I'm sure Ainsley will find her way eventually. The eventually hung in the air like a death sentence, the implication clear that at 28, I'd already failed at life by their standards. It's decided, Mom said firmly. We meet with the lawyer next week. It's what's best for everyone. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Excuse me, I managed, my voice steady despite the tornado in my chest. I need to use the bathroom. I walked with measured steps, refusing to run, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing me flee. But as I reached the hallway, Charlotte's voice carried clearly. She's always been too sensitive. Remember when she cried because I won the art contest in middle school? Some people just can't handle competition. Mom's laughter followed me down the hall. She entered that finger painting in a real contest. Can you imagine? Charlotte's architectural drawing was clearly superior. The judges knew real talent when they saw it. I closed the bathroom door and leaned against it, letting their laughter wash over me like acid rain. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, the art world would know what my family refused to see. But tonight, I had to survive one more dinner, one more round of their casual cruelty. I splashed cold water on my face, studying my reflection. The woman in the mirror wasn't the failure they saw. She was a Rain, whose work would hang in the Museum of Modern Art. I smiled, a real smile for the first time all evening. They wanted to see me break. Instead, they were about to watch me soar. I returned to the dining room with the calm of someone who'd already won a war nobody else knew was being fought. The conversation had shifted to Charlotte's latest courtroom victory, but Mom noticed my return and seemed irritated by my composed expression. She preferred me defeated, shoulders slumped in acknowledgement of my inadequacy. My straight posture and steady gaze clearly bothered her. Feeling better, Ainsley? Mom asked, her tone suggesting she hoped the answer was no. We were just discussing Charlotte's brilliant legal strategy in the Morrison case. Of course, you wouldn't understand the complexities, but it's fascinating how successful people navigate their fields. I sat down carefully, placing my phone face up on the table with deliberate precision. Actually, Mom, I wanted to ask you something. Could you repeat what you said earlier about success? About me versus Charlotte? Mom's eyes lit up with cruel delight, mistaking my question for an invitation to continue the humiliation. Of course, dear. I simply pointed out the obvious. Charlotte is successful and responsible, while you're still chasing childish dreams. She has a real career, real estate, real accomplishments. You have potential, I suppose. Wasted potential, but potential nonetheless. And you're changing your will because I'd waste any inheritance on art supplies? I prompted, my voice neutral as a gallery wall. Exactly, Mom nodded vigorously. Charlotte knows how to build wealth. You'd probably spend it all on canvas and paint and end up homeless within a year. It's not cruel, Ainsley, it's practical. Some people are meant to lead, others to follow. You should be grateful Charlotte's willing to help you find suitable employment. Charlotte leaned back, savoring her victory like expensive wine. It's not about being better than you, Ainsley. We're just different. I chose a path of substance and stability. You chose. She gestured vaguely at my paint-stained jeans, whatever this is. I see, I said, picking up my phone. So success to you means traditional career, property ownership, marriage to someone with status? Obviously, Charlotte rolled her eyes. What else would it mean? Instagram likes on your hobby paintings? I pulled up the press release, my fingers steady despite the earthquake inside me. What if I told you that success could mean having your work acquired by major museums? That it could mean international recognition and financial independence doing exactly what you love? Mom laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. Oh, Ainsley, not this again. Remember when you claimed someone paid $10,000 for one of your paintings? These fantasies aren't healthy. You're right, I agreed, surprising them. 10,000 does sound like a fantasy now. I turned my phone toward them, the MoMA logo prominent at the top of the document. 2 million is much more accurate. The silence that followed was absolute, as if someone had vacuum sealed the room. Charlotte was the first to react, snatching my phone with the grace of a vulture. What is this? Some kind of art school prank? Did you make a fake website? Read it, I suggested calmly. Museum of Modern Art announces acquisition of 15 works by contemporary artist A. Rain. Embargo lifts tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern. Mom's face cycled through emotions like a broken slot machine. Confusion, disbelief, anger, more confusion. A. Rain? Who the hell is A. Rain? What does this have to do with you? Everything, I said simply. A. Rain. Ainsley Rain. My professional pseudonym for the past 5 years while I built an international career you knew nothing about. This is fake, Charlotte insisted, but her voice wavered. Her fingers were already flying across her phone, searching for information. You're lying. You've always been jealous of my success, and now you're making up stories. Google it, I suggested. A. Rain artist. Check the sold prices at Sotheby's last year. Look up the Venice Biennale feature. Read the Guardian's profile from last month. Uncle Frank choked on his wine, coughing violently while Aunt Marie pounded his back. Cousin Brad's smirk had frozen on his face like a bad Botox job. Around the table, phones appeared in hands as family members frantically searched for proof of my deception or my truth. Holy shit, Brad whispered, the first to find something concrete. There's a painting here that sold for 300 grand. To some tech billionaire. The article says the artist's identity is a closely guarded secret. Charlotte's husband Richard looked over her shoulder, his surgeon's composure cracking. Charlotte, this appears to be legitimate. The MoMA doesn't do pranks. This press release is on their official media portal. I pulled up my phone's photo gallery, scrolling to carefully selected images. Here's me with Miranda Chen at her private collection unveiling. This is the Venice Gallery opening last year. That's Helen Whitfield, the MoMA curator, at my studio during the acquisition review. Oh, and this one's my favorite, accepting the Emerging Artist Award at the Tate Modern. Mom sank into her chair like a deflated balloon. You've been lying to us. 4 years. Pretending to be poor, pretending to struggle, making us worry. I tried to tell you, I reminded her gently. When I sold my first major piece, you laughed. You said I'd been scammed. Charlotte offered to have Richard investigate the fraud. So I stopped trying to share my success with people who were determined not to see it. Charlotte's phone clattered to the table. Her perfect composure, maintained through decades of family dinners, finally cracked. $2 million. They paid you $2 million for paintings? For 15 specific pieces that tell the story of a young woman finding her voice despite family attempts to silence it, I clarified. The curator called it a powerful exploration of intergenerational trauma and artistic liberation. Funny how pain can become profitable when you know how to channel it. Grandma, who'd been silent throughout dinner, raised her glass of apple juice. To my granddaughter, the famous artist. I always knew you'd show them someday. The room erupted. Everyone talked at once, voices climbing over each other like dancers fighting for the spotlight. Uncle Tony demanded to know if I could get his grandson into art school. Aunt Marie suddenly remembered how she'd always encouraged my artistic pursuits. Cousin Brad's wife mentioned she'd love a family discount on a commission. The transformation was instant and shameless, years of mockery evaporating like morning dew under the harsh sun of success. But I kept my eyes on Mom and Charlotte. Mom's hand shook as she reached for her wine, missing the stem twice before Charlotte steadied it for her. Charlotte's face had gone pale beneath her carefully applied makeup, her eyes darting between her phone and my face as if trying to reconcile the failure she'd always known with the success staring back at her. "This changes everything," Mom whispered, and I couldn't tell if she meant it as a promise or a threat. Mom's recovery was swift and shameless, a masterclass in historical revision that would make dictators jealous. She dabbed at her eyes with her napkin, manufacturing tears that seemed more calculation than emotion. "Oh, Ainsley, darling. I'm so proud of you. I always knew you were special. That's why I pushed you so hard, don't you see? I wanted you to achieve exactly this level of success." The lie was so bold, so breathtaking in its audacity, that I almost admired it. Around the table, relatives who'd spent years nodding along to Mom's dismissive comments about my art suddenly developed collective amnesia. Aunt Marie clutched her chest dramatically. "I always said Ainsley had something special. Didn't I say that, Frank? Remember at Christmas 3 years ago?" Uncle Frank, still processing the number 2 million, nodded eagerly. "Absolutely. Natural talent. Runs in the family. My mother painted, you know. Watercolors. Very artistic family, we are." Mom seized on this thread like a lifeline. "Yes, exactly. Artistic genes from both sides. I saved all of Ainsley's childhood paintings, you know. They're in the attic, carefully preserved. I knew they'd be worth something someday." "Really?" I challenged gently. "Because I remember finding them in trash bags during spring cleaning when I was 16. The only reason they survived is because Dad pulled them out and hid them in his office." Mom's eye twitched, but she powered through. "You misunderstood, sweetheart. I was organizing them for proper storage. A mother always believes in her children. Both of them. Equally." Charlotte slammed her palm on the table, making the china jump. "Stop it. Just stop it, Mother. We all know what you did. What we did. Don't insult Ainsley further by pretending otherwise." For a moment, I thought Charlotte might be experiencing genuine remorse. Then she turned to me, and I saw the rage burning in her eyes like acid. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Hiding your success, making us all look like fools. This whole suffering artist act while you were secretly rich." "I wasn't secretly rich," I corrected. "I was secretly working. Building a career while you all told me I was wasting my life. There's a difference." "This is probably temporary anyway," Charlotte spat, her composure crumbling like old paint. "The art market is notoriously volatile. One day you're hot, the next you're forgotten. You'll blow through that money within 2 years, and then what? You can't even manage basic finances. Remember when you couldn't afford to chip in for Mom's birthday party last year?" "I chose not to contribute to a party where I wasn't welcome," I clarified. "Mom specifically told me not to come because Charlotte's law firm partners would be there, and she didn't want to explain what I did for a living." Richard, who'd been quietly calculating on his phone, looked up with an expression I'd never seen before. "Fear." "Charlotte, perhaps we should discuss this privately." "Discuss what privately?" Charlotte snapped. "How my failure of a sister somehow stumbled into success. How she's been laughing at us behind our backs for years." "The partnership buy-in," Richard said quietly. "The loans. The credit cards." The room went still. Charlotte's perfect facade cracked wider, revealing something desperate underneath. "Shut up, Richard." But Pandora's box was open. Richard, perhaps emboldened by the wine or the shock of the evening, continued. "We're $300,000 in debt. The partnership required a massive buy-in, and Charlotte insisted we could handle it. The house in Back Bay? Second mortgage. The BMW? Leased. The vacation in France? Credit cards were still paying off. Richard. Charlotte shrieked, but he wasn't done. She wanted to impress you, he told Mom, his voice bitter. Everything was about maintaining the image. The successful daughter. The perfect life. Do you know what it's like to perform surgery all day and come home to spreadsheets of debt we'll never escape? Mom's face had gone gray. The successful daughter she'd held up as an example was drowning in red ink while the failure had millions. The cosmic joke was too much for her to process. She turned back to me, grasping for control of the narrative. Well, this is wonderful news for the family. Your success is our success, Ainsley. We should plan how to maximize this opportunity. I could manage your finances, help you invest properly. And Charlotte could handle any legal matters. Keep it in the family. Like you kept my college fund in the family when you gave it to Charlotte? I asked mildly. That was different, Mom insisted. That was an investment in Charlotte's future that benefited everyone. How exactly did Charlotte's wedding benefit me? I wondered aloud. I wasn't even in the wedding party. Too embarrassing to have an artist sister in the photos, remember? Uncle Frank, sensing opportunity, jumped in. I could help you expand your business. Real estate, that's where the money is. Art's nice, but property is forever. I already own property, I informed him. A building in Brooklyn I'm converting to affordable artist studios. And my residence. You said you lived in a studio apartment, Aunt Marie accused, as if catching me in a lie erased years of their contempt. I said you assumed I lived in a studio apartment. I never corrected you because you never asked. You all wrote your own story about my life and preferred that fiction to any truth I might share. Cousin Brad's wife, silent until now, raised her hand like a student. Could you paint something for our anniversary? We'd pay, of course. Maybe a friends and family discount? My commission rate starts at $50,000, I said evenly. The wait list is currently 18 months. The number hit the table like a bomb. Mom made a choking sound. Charlotte laughed, high and hysterical. $50,000? For a painting? Who pays that? Collectors who understand value, I replied. The same people who'll visit MoMA to see my work. The same people who bid against each other at auctions. The art world operates on different principles than law, Charlotte. Creativity can't be built in 6-minute increments. Don't lecture me about success, Charlotte snarled. You got lucky. One rich tech mogul noticed you and suddenly you think you're Picasso. It won't last. And when it crashes, don't come crying to us. Like you cried to Mom and Dad when you needed money for the partnership buy-in? Richard muttered, earning a wine glass thrown at his head. He ducked, and the crystal shattered against the wall, leaving a red stain like blood. Mom stood, swaying slightly. Everyone calm down. We're family. We support each other. Ainsley's success is a blessing for all of us. We should be celebrating, not fighting. We're not family, I said quietly, but everyone heard it. Family doesn't mock your dreams. Family doesn't drain your college fund. Family doesn't exclude you from gatherings because your career embarrasses them. We're related. That's biology. Family is a choice, and you all chose Charlotte. Now you can live with that choice. The silence stretched like a canvas, waiting for someone to fill it with meaning. But for once, they had nothing to say. The family hierarchy had collapsed, and they were still sorting through the rubble, trying to understand how the foundation they'd built on my supposed failure had crumbled so completely. I stood slowly, feeling the weight of 5 years of silence lifting from my shoulders. The room watched me like I was a bomb about to explode, but I felt calm, centered in a way that only comes from finally speaking truth to people who've devoted themselves to lies. You want to know what's really funny? I began, my voice steady as a gallery installation. All these years, you acted like my art was some childish hobby I couldn't give up. Like I was a failure who couldn't face reality. But the truth is, you were my art. Every dismissive comment, every forgotten birthday, every family gathering where I was either ignored or ridiculed, it all became paint on canvas. My success isn't despite you. It's because of you. I pulled up a photo on my phone, showing one of my most famous pieces. This one sold for $400,000 at Sotheby's. I painted it the night Mom told me I was an embarrassment to the family name. The critics called it a visceral exploration of rejection. The buyer said it made him cry. Charlotte's face contorted. You've been profiting off our family? No, I corrected. I've been transforming pain into beauty. Taking the ugliness you fed me and creating something meaningful. That's what artists do. We take the raw materials life gives us and make them matter. I scrolled to another image. This series of 3 paintings? Created after Dad missed my college graduation because Charlotte had a minor court appearance the same day. The European collector who bought them said they perfectly captured the loneliness of being unseen by those who should see you most clearly. Mom clutched the table edge. Ainsley, sweetheart, we never meant to hurt you. If we'd known you were struggling. But I wasn't struggling, I interrupted. That's what you never understood. I was building. Every time you told me to get a real job, I painted through the night. Every family dinner where Charlotte's achievements were celebrated while my existence was barely acknowledged, I went home and created. You thought you were watching me fail, but you were actually watching me fly. You just couldn't see it because you were too busy looking at Charlotte. Don't blame me for Mom's choices, Charlotte snapped, but her voice cracked. I didn't ask to be the favorite. No, but you enjoyed it, I said simply. You loved being the golden child. The successful one. The comparison that made me look worse. Remember my first gallery show? The one you said you'd attend? Charlotte's face went red. I had a work obligation. You were at a spa weekend with your law school friends. You posted it all over social media. Mom liked every photo while I stood in that gallery, searching the crowd for family that never came. The gallery owner asked about my support system. I had to lie and say you were all traveling. Grandma's voice cut through the tension. I wanted to come. They told me it would be too difficult with my wheelchair. Said the gallery wasn't accessible. I turned to her, my heart breaking. The gallery was fully accessible, Grandma. I made sure of it. Her eyes filled with tears, and she turned to Mom with a look that could strip paint. You lied to me. You made me miss my granddaughter's first show. Mom, it's complicated, my mother started, but Grandma raised a shaking hand. Nothing complicated about cruelty, Grandma said firmly. I've watched you destroy this girl for years, building up Charlotte while tearing Ainsley down. I said nothing because I thought you'd eventually see sense. But you're so blinded by your own prejudices, you couldn't recognize brilliance when it lived in your own house. Dad, who'd been silent through the chaos, finally spoke. I knew about the art career. Everyone turned to stare at him. He met my eyes, his own wet with unshed tears. I've known for 2 years. I follow A. Rain on social media. I've read every article, watched every interview. I even flew to New York last year to see your work at a gallery. Stood in the back, didn't announce myself. Just wanted to see my daughter's success without the family circus. You knew? Mom's voice rose to a shriek. You knew and didn't tell me? Because I knew what you'd do, Dad said simply. You'd either dismiss it or try to take credit for it. You'd make it about Charlotte somehow, or find a way to diminish it. I wanted Ainsley to have something that was purely hers, untainted by your toxic comparisons. How dare you, Mom started, but Dad wasn't finished. I'm proud of Ainsley. Prouder than you can imagine. She took every cruel word, every deliberate slight, every moment of favoritism, and transformed it into something beautiful. While Charlotte built a life on our expectations and loans she can't repay, Ainsley built an empire on her own talent and determination. If that doesn't tell you which daughter actually succeeded, then you're beyond help. Charlotte stood so fast her chair fell backwards. Screw all of you. You want to worship the family freak who finger paints for a living? Fine. When her 15 minutes are up and she's begging for money, remember this moment. Charlotte, Richard tried, but she rounded on him. And you? Airing our finances like dirty laundry. You're pathetic. A surgeon who can't even manage money properly. I manage it fine, Richard shot back. You spend it faster than I can earn it, trying to impress a mother who only loves you for your achievements. What happens when she finds out you're not making partner? That the firm is restructuring and you'll be lucky to keep your job? The room gasped. Charlotte's secret failure hung in the air like one of my paintings, visible to all. She grabbed her purse, her hands shaking. I'm leaving. Don't contact me. Any of you. She stormed out, Richard trailing behind after a mumbled apology. The door slammed, rattling the family photos on the wall. How appropriate that her exit shook the very symbols of our manufactured history. Mom sank into her chair, looking older than I'd ever seen her. Everything I did was for this family. To ensure success, stability, respectability. No, I said gently but firmly. Everything you did was for your ego. You wanted daughters who reflected well on you. Charlotte played that game and now she's drowning. I refused to play and found my own way. The saddest part is that if you'd supported both of us equally, we might have both been truly happy. Aunt Marie tried one more time. But surely now, with your success, you can help Charlotte? Family helps family. The same family that mocked me for years? That treated me like a cautionary tale to scare their children into conventional careers? That family? I gathered my things, feeling lighter with each moment. I'm done pretending we're something we're not. Grandma, you're welcome in my life anytime. Dad, you too. The rest of you? You made your choice every time you laughed at my dreams. Now you get to live with it. As I reached the door, Mom called out. The will. I'll change the will. You'll get your share. I turned back, almost pitying her. I don't need your money, Mom. I never did. All I needed was your faith in me. But that's the one thing you could never give, and the only thing money can't buy. I left them sitting in the ruins of their assumptions, the Thanksgiving dinner cold and forgotten on the table. Outside, the November air was sharp and clean. Tomorrow, the world would know a rain. But tonight, I was just Ainsley, finally free from the weight of their expectations. And that was worth more than any painting I'd ever sold. The next morning, I woke in my penthouse loft to the sound of notifications exploding across my phone. The MoMA announcement had gone live at 9 a.m. sharp, and the art world was buzzing. My publicist had already fielded dozens of interview requests. The Google alerts for a rain were multiplying faster than I could read them. But between the congratulations from galleries and collectors, my family's messages created their own chaotic symphony. Mom had left 17 voicemails, each more desperate than the last. They ranged from tearful apologies to angry demands for explanation to bizarre attempts at rewriting history where she'd always been my biggest supporter. Charlotte had texted once, a brief congratulations, followed immediately by a block on all social media platforms. The relatives who'd witnessed last night's implosion were divided into camps, some reaching out with sudden warmth, others maintaining defensive silence. I made coffee in my sun-drenched kitchen, ignoring them all. The view from my windows showed Brooklyn stretching toward Manhattan, a canvas of possibility. 3 floors below, my private studio waited, the space I'd dreamed of while painting in cramped apartments. This afternoon, I had a meeting with the architects about the Artist Collective building. 24 affordable studios for emerging artists who, like me, might come from families that didn't understand their vision. My phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Cousin Brad's wife, Emma. Ainsley, I know we haven't been close, but I wanted to say something. My daughter, Lily, she's 8. She loves to draw. After seeing how your family treated you last night, I realized I've been doing the same thing to her, telling her art isn't practical. I'm going to sign her up for classes. Maybe you could meet her someday? Not for a commission, just to show her what's possible. It was the first genuine moment any of them had offered. I'd be happy to meet Lily. There's a young artists program at MoMA. I'll send you information. The conversation gave me hope that patterns could break, even if it took generations. I spent the morning fielding calls from legitimate journalists, sharing the story I'd kept private for so long. By noon, my Instagram had gained 100,000 followers. Rain was trending on art Twitter. The mystery of my identity became part of the narrative, the hidden artist who'd quietly built an empire while her family looked the other way. 6 months later, my life had settled into a new rhythm. The Williamsburg Artist Collective was thriving, filled with talented creators from backgrounds as complex as mine. I'd hired a therapist who specialized in family trauma and creative professionals, working through years of internalized doubt. The paintings I created during this period were different, softer somehow, less angry but more profound. Charlotte and I hadn't spoken since Thanksgiving. Through the family grapevine, I heard she'd left her law firm before they could restructure her out. She and Richard divorced quietly, splitting debt instead of assets. Last I heard, she was working at a small nonprofit, using her legal skills to help domestic violence survivors. It was the first time she'd chosen a path based on meaning rather than status. I hoped she'd found some peace in that. Mom struggled the most with the new reality. She'd shown up at my building once, demanding to see me, to explain herself. Security turned her away per my instructions. She sent letters, long rambling things that veered between accountability and accusation. I read them with my therapist, processing the manipulation disguised as love. Eventually, the letters stopped. Dad told me she'd started therapy herself, finally confronting whatever drove her to create such a toxic hierarchy between her daughters. Dad became a regular presence in my life. We had coffee every Wednesday, slowly building the relationship we'd never had. He shared his own artistic interests, photography he'd hidden because it wasn't masculine enough for the family standard. I encouraged him to pursue it. His first exhibition, at a small gallery in Queens, made him cry with joy. I stood in the back, understanding exactly how he felt. Grandma moved into my guest suite after a fall made living alone impossible. At 93, she became the grandmother I'd always needed. She shared stories of her own artistic dreams, deferred for marriage and motherhood in an era that offered fewer choices. Her paintings, created in my studio with adapted tools for her arthritis, had a primitive beauty that made my heart soar. When she passed peacefully in her sleep 8 months later, I held her hand, grateful for the time we'd had to know each other truly. The anniversary of that explosive Thanksgiving arrived with unusual warmth for November. I hosted a dinner for my chosen family, fellow artists, supportive friends, my mentor from art school who'd never stopped believing in me, Dad with his new camera always ready, and Emma with little Lily, who showed me drawings that reminded me why art matters. As we sat around my table, sharing food and laughter without judgment or comparison, my phone buzzed with a text. Mom had sent a photo of a small painting I'd done at age 7, a watercolor of our family holding hands. She'd kept it after all, hidden in her jewelry box all these years. Her message was simple: I see you now. I'm sorry it took so long. I showed it to Dad, who squeezed my shoulder. What will you do? I don't know yet, I admitted. Forgiveness was a process, not a moment. Trust, once shattered, required careful reconstruction. But I'd learned that holding on to anger was like gripping a paintbrush too tight. It limited the art you could create. After dinner, as my guests admired my latest work in progress, Lily tugged on my sleeve. Aunt Ainsley, do you think I could be a real artist someday? I knelt to her level, seeing myself in her hopeful eyes. You already are a real artist, Lily. Every time you create something from your heart, you're an artist. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. She hugged me tight, and over her shoulder, I caught my reflection in the studio window. The woman looking back wasn't defined by her family's rejection or their belated acceptance. She was Ainsley Rain, an artist who'd transformed pain into beauty and found her voice in the silence of others' doubt. My phone buzzed again. Charlotte had unblocked me, sent a simple message, saw the MoMA exhibition. You deserved better from all of us. Especially from me. I typed back, we all deserved better. Maybe it's not too late to try again. The story that began with public humiliation at a Thanksgiving table had become something else entirely. Not a revenge tale, but a resurrection story. My art now explored themes of forgiveness and rebuilding, the complex geometry of family bonds that break and reform in new patterns. Success hadn't come from proving them wrong but from proving myself right. Some collectors said my newer work lacked the raw edge of my early pieces. But art, like life, evolves. The anger that once fueled my creativity had transformed into something more sustainable, purpose. Every young artist who painted in our collective, every child like Lily who saw possibility in my journey, every family member slowly finding their way back to authenticity, they were all part of the canvas I was creating. The museum acquisition that changed everything now felt like a beginning rather than an ending. $2 million had bought my freedom, but the real value lay in what I'd done with that freedom. Building spaces for others, choosing forgiveness where possible, establishing boundaries where necessary, and always creating art that told the truth, even when that truth was complicated. As my guests prepared to leave, Dad pulled me aside. I'm proud of you, Ainsley. Not for the success, though that's wonderful. For how you've handled it. For who you've become. I hugged him, feeling the solidness of genuine support. Thanks, Dad. For seeing me when it mattered. Later, alone in my studio, I started a new painting. This one wasn't about pain or rejection or even triumph. It was about possibility, the space between what was and what could be. My family might never fully heal, but we were all painting our own futures now, with whatever colors we could find. And maybe that was enough. The critics who'd analyzed my work often spoke about the journey from darkness to light in my collections. But standing there that night, brush in hand, I realized the real journey was from silence to voice, from hiding to being seen, from performing success to defining it for myself. My mother had been wrong about many things, but she'd been right about one: I was nothing like Charlotte. And finally, beautifully, that was exactly the point. Where are you watching from today? Have you ever felt overlooked or undervalued by your own family, only to prove them wrong in ways they never expected? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about finding your voice when others try to silence it. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their dreams are valid, no matter what their family says. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, sometimes the best response to those who don't believe in you is to succeed so brilliantly they have no choice but to see your light.